Meghna Narayan, co-founder Slurp Farm. Welcome to ET Ask the Expert. So let's start with the name first. Slurp Farm with a double R. Right? Where did this name originate?
So Umang, Shoravi, and I were sitting around the dining table thinking about. At this point, we knew we wanted to build a kids' food company. We wanted to make clean label foods for kids. That was, I think, all we had, and we were thinking about products. And he made the noise, and the slurp noise came out of his mouth, and then we were like, "That should be the name." And then we thought about colors and the animals, and then that the farm came together, and that's how the name Slurp Farm stuck.
And the word slurp is a little, for want of a better word, a little uppity English word. And you
Yes.
sell in tier two and tier three towns. Any concerns that this name might not resonate with tier two, tier three people for whom English was not their uh, dominant language?
We didn't think that hard, is the truth. We really just fell in love with the sound. And it doesn't matter which part of the world you're in, you know the sound. So we figured at some point there'd be a mnemonic. That was not something at all that we considered. I have to say, when I go into trade, I hear all kinds of names. In Bangalore, I'm Slurpoo. So, yeah. So I think we've learned to live with learn to live with that. But yes, we're hoping at some point, the sound slopes just sticks.
And from what I've read and understood, you were trying to feed your own daughter healthy foods and you couldn't find any of them and you decided to start a food company of your own.
Yes.
I ask you this because entrepreneurs can go wrong this way. You can create a solution looking for a problem. There's the story of the famous telecom company. This guy wanted to make one random phone call from a ship to the middle of nowhere and then said, I can't do it. So I'm going to launch a satellite company so I can call anybody anywhere. And
Yeah.
that company famously failed.
Yeah.
Uh, are there any risks to this method of uh, coming up with an idea for entrepreneurship?
Oh, 100%. You can make a product that solves your very, very specific individual problem, and no one else, either cares about the problem or really about your solution, right? So, absolutely. I don't think it was just that simple. I think most definitely, Shoravi, me, a whole bunch, we were all about that same age, right? And all, people were having kids. Some friends had just had children. We were in the process of having children. All of that was going on, and so I think we just start moms talk to each other, new moms especially, most definitely talk to each other. You're part of WhatsApp groups, and Facebook groups and all of that, and the conversations were increasingly about this in our echo chamber. Sure, we spent a decade in investment banking. I spent a decade in management consulting. While the problem was identified through Nandita and Roshan, that's our sort of children. The you know we did go and look at what are the movies that have played out in other markets, right? We had seen brands like Ella's Kitchen, sort of really transform the way the kids' food aisle looked in the UK. In the US, there was Plum Organics, Earth's Best, and so on, right? So you saw a lot of these kids' food brands really come and innovate on product with, of course, the consumer in mind. So we did the same, but obviously with the Indian mom in mind. So, for example, we knew that like most Indian moms will try and feed their kids with a katori and spoon. That is, we don't do this. We won't give a pouch to a kid. Nobody will trust that the kid is eaten only a pouch. So we want the bowl to be khatam, right? Or in whatever language you speak. And that, while you might allow a few spoons of baby led weaning, in the end, the mother will make sure that the food is in the tummy, right? For us, I would say the journey began of, yes, there's a sizable market which has seen very limited innovation for since my mother was a child. So there's clearly space to do something. What can that something be? How is that going to play out? What does it mean for as kids grow up, so on and so forth, right? So I want to say the problem statement might have been clear, but unpeeling the onion and trying to figure out what does that mean, how does that work into people's daily lives across the country has been the joy of the last 9 years.
Meghna, you seem to have three concurrent missions. One is to
Yeah.
create healthy food options for kids and now adults.
Yeah.
Two, to empower farmers to grow indigenous sustainable crops. And three, and I imagine equally importantly, to run a successful, profitable business.
Yes.
At first reading, these three missions seems to be like a trilemma, like conflicting with each other. You can choose any two of this, but you can't choose all three. Do you
Yes.
experience any conflict?
So I think the way capitalism has been structured, over the whatever past hundreds of years, it has most definitely it's in conflict. I just feel, and both Shorvi and I felt very strongly about this, that it doesn't have to be, and there is a way to build companies, where with profit is always going to be, a motive, but with purpose at the core. And to be honest, we are not the first ones doing this. There are enough companies out there that have done it beautifully, over the past 50, 60 years, right? One of the companies that we look at sort of is Patagonia, for example. So beautifully, the mission, so mission oriented and so on. And so I won't, the farmer piece has recently entered, I would say more recent, right? We just wanted to build a clean label kids food brand, but the more we understood about grains, the way things are grown, the way the pesticides used, the sort of so on and so forth, the more we realized how our answers lay in this world of indigenous grains and so on. Right, that's why we fell into the world of millets. Nutritionally superior, better for the planet, and better for the farmer that grows them. So in terms of health, so it just felt like this should be part of our mission. And if, we've also realized the kind of people we are, unless we put a goal to it, it won't happen. So that's why sort of the 10,000 farmer goal has come, and in the next 3 years that is our goal, to work with these farmers through cooperatives, but yeah, to work with 10,000
So,
farmers.
Meghna, in preparation for this interview, I ordered a couple of packets of your adult food brand, Mille. I
Nice.
ordered your Jowar puffs, I think.
Yeah,
Spicy,
nice. Yeah.
but very tasty.
Doing very well, selling really well in all of the airports, in the what is those vending machines.
Was this brand Mille born out of a quest to find healthy foods for yourself, for instance, or your co founders or your friends?
No, so I will say Mile was born with a slightly different sort of. I think we were anyway. We had also our homes. There's ragi rotis in my house, and there has been for the past sort of 8, 9 years. Right, that is part of who we are and how we live. So I wouldn't say that we sort of decided we wanted Mile for ourselves. That was, I would say, the Slurp Farm that sort of story, and that's how that came about. With Mile, actually, to be honest, there were a lot of people who were consumers of Slurp Farm who would send me things like their glucose monitoring thing, saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I didn't get a spike only." And things like that, right? So I was like, when all these glucose monitoring people showed up, and then the weight loss people started telling me, "Hey, I've sort of removed wheat from my diet, and I've removed dairy from my diet, and I've removed palm oil from my diet, or whatever it is, and I've started to use Slurp Farm." But can you? I wish there was one which had no, forget no refined sugar, no sugar at all, or a slightly higher protein or a higher fiber, because that's what I need for my. Because Slurp Farm was not designed for a weight loss regimen, right? It's designed for young children who are, sort of who have to eat multiple small meals and are running around, burning energy. So we're like, we can do that better. We can design products for adults who are thinking about these kinds of issues, right? So in their late 20s, early 30s, they've finished their first jobs, they've put on their 15 kilos, and are thinking, "Oh my God, I really like, a little bit scared, right? Pre-diabetic, all of that." So that's who we're trying to help.
And you're selling this in multiple countries, from what I understand, not just India, in Singapore and Ireland and a few other countries.
Yes, but to be honest, India is the main market. We never say no to business. So when people reach out and say, "We love the product, we'd like to sell it," we say yes. But India is sort of 90 something percent of the business. Yeah.
All right, now let's move on to the investor side of things. Investors are, I'm assuming, investing in your business so they get a return. What if one of them pushes you towards greater profitability and you find yourself you need to compromise on your core values about healthy foods for kids or for farmers?
So I think one of the most important things is, just like when you decide to work with a co-founder, you have to make that decision. Who are you putting around your table, right? And the way we have thought about investors is just like that. It's not been any different in the choices we've made in terms of actually employ people who work with us, people who in a chamber, right? Who you're going to talk to every day. And I think we have been so lucky that the right people came along at the right time almost. So whether it's been, to start with, we had Fireside Ventures. One of the reasons they are excited about a company, like working with a company like this, is absolutely return, right? And the opportunity of building a very, very large, firstly kids food brand and then adult brand in the space. There's no question of where the tide of healthy food is moving, the pace at which we all know these things take time to build, but they also have understood that it takes time to build. And so there's two things. One is people understanding that good things take time, in the food business most definitely, but it's also really sticky. Once a consumer has understood your value, our repeat rates are amongst the best, in the industry, right? So I think getting the right people around the table, whether it is Fireside, ICD, or the Sheikh Sadia Family Office, or Sharp Ventures, or Alchemy, have all been sort of have understood. We never hid that. It's on our second page. There are three things that we say. We say we will only build products that are positive nutrition. We will only we will work towards, we're plastic neutral now. We want to be carbon neutral, so that sort of working with farmers is part of that. And a percentage of what we make will go toward, in terms of revenue, goes towards Akshay Patra. So you have to sign up to all that, right? That's not sort of hidden on the 17th page in a footnote.
All right, now let's talk about finding a co-founder. We get this question every time we do this show and ask the
Okay.
expert, where do I find a co-founder and how do I find a co-founder? Were you and Shaurabi, your co-founder, friends before you started this, or did you meet to start this business?
No, so we were friends first. But we had not worked together. But I think sort of finding a co-founder is a little bit like finding your spouse. I always say that Shoravi and Arnaba, my husband, both irritate me also in the same ways. So I really have a type, the A type individual. And I feel like that shared value of what is important, uh, is most core, right? And then you have to hope that the person doesn't change, because
That's yeah.
that happens too.
That's the same in a relationship, I guess.
It is exactly the same. To me, they're the same. They're the same. I actually, might argue I probably spend more time with Shoravi than with my husband. So, I think you have to grow together, and make sure you communicate, just like in a marriage, right? It's not a secret. I think it's the same thing, and you see a lot of co-founders falling out because of that. Sometimes because the business doesn't do well, sometimes because it does really well, and both can be issues.
The perils of failure and success are roughly the same.
Correct.
From your experience, if two co-founders fell out,
Yes.
how do investors react to that?
One of the joys for me of building this has been building alongside Shoravi. I did not know this when I started working with her, but we are, on paper, I would say, quite similar in terms of, sort of have gone to all the right schools. We worked at sort of blue chip consulting, investment banks, and so on and so forth. She's an economist by training. I'm an engineer by training, but we both think, sort of, there we are always doing ROI calculations in our head, and sort of very in a certain linear fashion. But she's a long-term thinker. She's the true visionary, right? And I'm the more. We have these two, maybe 1.5 data points. I have to draw a line and take a decision and jump today. uh, I would say that's my superpower, and hers is. So we've, in some crazy way, balanced each other. Whenever I look at a problem that I feel like this requires a greater thought and a smarter person to think about it, I throw it away. And if she feels like she's coming in the way of execution, she will move out. So I think that's how we have done this job of co-CEO, even though obviously we do look at different pieces of the business, but it's still one business, right? So there are many things that we have to do together. Yeah. So you said, how do investors look at it? I think it's very hard for investors, and it must be, you either have to find a new co-founder, or you have to hope that the one that is, to be honest, I don't even know how how you would go about unpeeling some of that.
Meghna, surely you accept that no two people are 100% alike, including siblings who co
Yes.
found businesses, sometimes spouses co found
Yeah.
businesses. Now, specifically, what core values do you and Shauravi share exactly, and where
Yeah.
do you differ exactly?
So I think we truly, not once have we questioned the positive nutrition aspect. Actually, not only us, it's our broader team. Once in a while there'll be a joke about making a junk food product, but that's it. Nobody really will ever talk about, nobody even, and it's so much easier, right? Because it's cheaper, and it's cheaper to make, and it's tastier. I mean, deep fried anything is broadly tastier, right? Or but I feel like we share that. We also share the, and she perhaps has inculcated that in me, this deeper understanding of that, things take time, and that we're going to have to, this is unrelenting, right? You're chipping away at a big problem every day. One of her favorite sort of sayings is, you often underestimate what you can do in a decade, but overestimate what you can do in one. Right? Bill Gates said that originally. And I want to say everybody in our company knows that saying, right? And I feel like she has brought that to me, even though maybe I knew it. I'm a competitive swimmer who swam over decades, right? More than a decade. So I feel like we've taught each other things, but mostly we have very high trust and respect. If you have that, then you're okay, even if you disagree. It's not like we don't disagree. We disagree all the time. But yes.
But on a common platform of
Then
trust
we
and
pick a
respect.
team and then we go behind that. We don't question incessantly. Yeah.
Should two co founders share equal responsibilities, or is one of you the first among equals?
So for us, we share equal responsibilities, but so I had new product development, right? I'm the first among equal on that topic. So people know that if the final call lays with Meghna, but on things marketing, the final call lies with her. On sales, final calls, things like that. So we split sort of responsibility in terms of who's responsible for what. Uh, but yeah. So I would
Does
say,
that not create two camps in the company? I'm loyal to Meghna, I'm loyal to Shauravi. The employees tend to play you off each other. It could happen because it's happened. It happens in
I'm
households.
sure.
It happens in
I'm sure it
politics.
does. I think so. We have something called a same page meeting that we put, and it's a report. We report to each other in that meeting. So I think we try and remove any confusion there. We've also had a very sort of radical transparency way of operating, not just amongst ourselves, but with our team. So, for example, everybody in the company will know sort of the top line, what we sort of, if we were sort of, we aiming towards profitability soon, but how much money we lost in the month, how much cash burn, how much money is in the bank, everything. Everybody's treated like an adult in the room. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that question
Yeah.
of loss. Startups tend to lose money, and in some cases, a lot of money in the
Yes.
initial years
Yeah.
while they're on their runway to take
Yeah.
off. But employees need to be paid. Inflation is a real thing. They need to be given raises as well
Yes.
while you're loss making.
Yeah.
And if the employees see losses either reported by you or in the media, does that impact their morale saying, I've been working in this company 3 years and we're still making losses? Do you need to constantly sort of boost employee morale?
So I think for us, we've also grown 100% every year, right? So I think people have seen that as well. We've last year we decided, let's see if we can really be profitable. We keep talking about it. So we decided in June. By August we were EBITDA profitable, not cash yet, but EBITDA. Yeah. And so people saw that also, right? It's not like that was done in some secret box in a corner. uh, and I think they understand that in order to grow at this 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, there's marketing dollars that have to go into it, right? So we have like large events with Anushka, and well, like, lots of things that we work with our brand ambassador on, that drives this kind of awareness and growth. So I think people have understood what is going on. We try to make sure that this is like we have a quarterly, sometimes a monthly town hall, depending on the need, where we share all of this. We also share the bad news, which is, we haven't grown as quickly as we like. What are we going to do over the next quarter? How are we going to shift? What is going to take to shift the needle and so on? So I think we have also learned in the beginning. I would say I thought like you did, which is if you share too much information, will people get spooked? But for the most part, I think firstly the ecosystem has evolved. People have seen companies like large companies, right, like Zomato and Swiggy and so on, lose money and so on, and still go on to eventually be profitable. And how? So I feel like that has certainly helped us as well.
Another question we get from our viewers and listeners is the nature of a co-founder, because founders and staff use co-founder in two different ways. One, two people get together to start a business. Second, somebody gets elevated to co-founder status, and that person presumably joined as an employee. He or she joined as an employee. How does this work? You're an actual co-founder or you're an elevated co-founder. Is there a difference between these two kinds of co-founders?
So obviously for us, we started the company together. So we are co-founders. There's also co-founders that are sort of day to day and the ones that are not day to day, right? So I feel like there's all kinds of ways in which people work together, or people who have been part of the journey from the very early days who have been elevated, especially in single co-founded businesses. I've seen that happen quite a lot. But if somebody has been there for a decade and fully has, been part of the journey from the beginning, it was just a matter of timing that you didn't. So I think in those cases, it can work really well. I think at the end of the day, it's all about trust, respect, and if you are treating that person as an equal co-founder, then the organization will too.
All right, now let's move on to angel investors. So, what exactly are angel investors? And on the flip side, what are devil investors by definition?
Oh my God. Yeah, so I think so. Angel investors are normally people who invest in you very early in the game, right? So for us, to be honest, we bootstrapped our company for the first sort of 2, 3 years. This is where we were trying to figure out, the first questions, right? What are the products? What's working? What's not working? Do only we care about this? What exactly do people care about? I got some very good advice from a friend, said that, customers will ask for 1,000 things. They're only going to pay for two or three. You have to find out what those two, three are. That's the job of the entrepreneur. The first time we raised money is when I got a call from, somebody at Big Basket saying that, hey, your repeat rate on your chocolate pancake is exceptional. So I was, this is around, just to be clear, we were doing about 1 lakh of sales on, not even on total. And he said, well, whatever it is, that repeat rate is very good. Somebody tries it, they love it, and they keep ordering it every single week. So you're doing something right. Don't lose faith, keep going. It was very nice. And I felt, okay, I have very, what you call, that early signs of product market fit. Here's the time to raise a little bit of money to this thing. So we went to, both Chorvi and I went to all the people that we were friends with, when we were analysts, right? So because the people who have seen you when you're in the grind working till 4 a.m. are your sort of who worked alongside you and now in big jobs and so on and have the money to invest in companies. uh, Whatever number they said, I halved it. I said, if you said this, I'll take half, then, even if it goes down, it means nothing. Then we could still go on holiday together. That was my in my the mental frame. Then we had a few who were customers. So actually, we had Sanjeev Bichchandani, Ashish Dhawan, Sam Bedi of Forest Essentials, who were actually customers who had reached out. And we felt that each one of them could add so much value in building this business, that they would be great to have along for the ride. So I feel like it was either truly friends and family or people who were customers who could this thing. I think with all of these, right, you must have proper legal advice. Make sure that sort of everybody's interests are kept in mind, but also that they cannot come into the day to day. Frankly, none of these people were interested in being in the day to day working of my company. They had their own companies to run, and but you have an obligation, right? So I send out an email every quarter, for example, and mostly they're just really encouraging. But I think it can be very tough if especially when things don't go well. If people decide, I've seen that in other companies. We've been lucky to not be in that situation where things are not going well, and an angel investor is trying to force the hand of an entrepreneur to do something they don't want to. That's very tough.
Have any of your investors ever asked you to switch? Last year it happened a lot. Enough growth, enough growth, enough growth. Now unit economics and profitability. And many entrepreneurs found themselves caught in a bind because they were in growth mode and suddenly they had to switch gears to profitability and unit economics mode.
So, I think structurally, right, FMCG businesses don't have the same problems of sort of e-commerce and sort of the tech. This thing, we don't have that. We can, quite like I said, in 3 months we can turn it around, and nobody asked us to. I just felt we should try and see whether, and figure out what the levers were, which I have to say was the best thing we did, not only for Shorvi and Meghna, but for the whole team. Now everyone knows, and I'm telling you, the confidence that profitability brings,
Yeah, is.
nothing brings,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yes, we don't grow as quickly, but it's totally fine, right? We are here to build for the next 20 years. So,
Meghna, you've raised money multiple times.
yes.
And I've read a few interviews that you've done about investors asking you, so what does your husband do?
Yes.
Right? So notice no questions about any of your spouses during this interview.
Yes.
But on a more serious note, what has raising money taught you about yourself, about managing investors?
So I think when you go into an investor meeting, and may every entrepreneur who's watching this be as lucky as we are. So firstly, we always had choice, right? And so it was always very. It was not just about the valuation and so on. Yes, of course, that's important. In terms of dilution and so on, but it was also about who do we really want in our lives, right? Because these people are in your life now, and how much ever how each level of engagement can vary between investors, how much they own, so on and so forth. But I don't know. I really am a person who loves to enjoy the day to day of my life. So who I bring into my tent, I quite carefully choose, because it's nothing is worth being miserable about, right? So I think making sure that the people that you bring into your tent are people that are truly also see the long term possibilities, and that any business is going to have some great years and some not so great years, right? That's just life. Yeah.
Okay, make the final question. All my reading about you has convinced me that you're a bona fide crazy person. And I'm going to list out the reasons why.
Oh no.
You represented India in swimming,
Yes.
went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, did an MBA at Harvard, worked at McKinsey, successful startup founder,
Yes.
mother, and if I may add, potential stand-up comic. Right?
Oh, bless.
And I've read that you wake up at 5:30 every day and you put in like 10, 12, 15-hour days. I'm assuming that more than that sometimes.
I
At the
sleep
core of
really well too. I just want to make sure everybody
you
understands.
sleep really well too.
Yeah.
And you make enough time for your daughter, I imagine.
I try.
With
I
all
try
that.
very hard. That's the question that she has to answer.
Like I said, you're a crazy overachiever, it seems like. At the core of all of this, what drives you personally? Not the company, not your co founder, just you.
Yeah. So I think genuinely, right, I work really hard at. I've also realized that what has brought me joy my whole life is actually the people around me. This is why I go on about make sure the people around the table are, whether investors, co-founders, employees, are people who spark joy in your life, right? And remove the ones that don't. So make sure that you sort of and when I look back at the the list of like my favorite memories or people, they're from many of them are from my swimming years. Some of my best friends were made at Oxford. I met my husband there. So on and so forth, right? So it's always been around people. So this is what motivates me, enjoying the people around me. I'm an extrovert. I do enjoy people. They give me energy. So I collect that and hold that close.
All right, Meghna Narayan of Slurp Farm, thank you very much for talking to Ask the Expert.
Very happy to be here.